Hey, welcome to another video of my 18th Century Undergarments series. We're going to be finishing off our stays today. Now, you're going to notice right off the bat, I already did all my eyelets. It wasn't interesting, and obviously I did not do it historical accurate way, so I ended up just doing it yesterday when I was home. I did it while watching a movie. I got exactly one and a half hand-bound eyelids into it before I decided, why am I doing this? Just because doing it by hand is a longer process, and I wanted to get these done by the end of the week. Hopefully I still do. I mean, it's only Wednesday, so hopefully I do get these done by the end of the week. I did end up setting in metal grommets instead of doing it by hand. They'll be a bit stronger. They'll deal with a little more wear and tear than if I did it by hand. And also, it was a lot faster. I got this whole row done about the time it would have taken me to do two regular ones by hand. Okay, so let's get into the technical stuff that you missed. To start off the eyelets, I usually go down about an inch. I make my hole. I will either done it by hand or set in the grommet. Then I measure down a ½ inch, and I do the next one. And then after that, they're all in inch-wide intervals. That's because I'm using spiral lacing. So instead of going in a crisscross across the front, it's just going to go kind of like in a zigzag, which is the historically accurate way to do stays, or anything that's really properly closing. Usually those X's were only decorative. So anyway, full inch down for the first one, ½ inch for the next one, then inch long all the way down. On the other side, it was inch down. Then I kept going an inch wide all the way down. So I got to the bottom where I did a ½ inch to even them out at the bottom. And I did the same on my back pieces as well. You can see here, I did, there's the ½ inch, here's the inch on this side. Okay, now this side is already boned, so I'm going to put this aside. Now you'll notice this does not look very pretty, does it? I'm using zip ties. To make life a little bit easier, I measured out the zip ties and I stuck them in ahead of time because I had 3 different sizes. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to finish off my zip ties so that I don't have to worry about them poking me too much. Okay, so let's just pull out one so I can show you what I'm doing here. Now you're going to notice that this zip tie is coming to a point at the end. Not a sharp point, but definitely enough that I'm afraid that it might poke through my fabric after a while. So I'm going to take my Dremel tool here, and I'm actually going to sand this point down to make it a little bit more of a curve. Let's see. Alright, so there you go. It's definitely a bit more subtle there. So I'm going to line my bone up right here along my boning channel. And I'm going to clip it about a ½ inch to an inch below the top of my stays. I got my craft scissors here. Little clip. And then I'm going to sand this down to a nice curve again. Now again, you can use sandpaper or whatever you have. I have this tool. I'm going to use it. Alright, so there we are. I'm going to slide this in between the 2 layers of utility fabric. I'm just going to push it down so that it's in place. There we go. So that's one done. You might run into some issues here where the length of your boning channel is longer than your zip tie. Now, I have a method for how I handle this. I don't know if this is the correct way or if I'm going to run into a ton of issues someday. But what I do is, I'll round off I'm going to just sand down the edge here like I did before. And I'm going to clip the top of this at an angle. There we are. I'm going to take a second bone here, and I'm going to make sure this is long. I'm going to make sure I clip it so that it's still long enough. There we go. Yeah, that's about right. So I'm going to clip this one also at the same or fairly similar angle. And I'm actually just going to tape these together with regular tape. Angle's a little bit steep. Let's go a little bit less on that. There we go. See, so it lines up here. So I'm actually just going to take a piece of tape, just regular tape. I'm gonna pop it in here. I'm gonna line my two ends up, and I'm just going to tightly wrap it around. And then, just for a little extra security, I usually take a second piece of tape, and I'm gonna hold it so that it covers a little bit more ground here. And I'm gonna wrap this one around too, just to secure everything. Now, is this the right way of doing this? Probably not, but it's fine. It works for me. It's cheap, it's easy. That's kind of our theme with these stays. So that works out all right. I'm just going to dull down this point, just like I did with the other ones. So I'm just going to slide this in between my utility fabric layers. I'm just going to push it down to the bottom. And there we go. So I'm just going to quickly finish off the rest of these, and I'll be with you in a second. Okay, so we are going to bind the top of our stays. I am so excited to have the binding almost done. You have no idea. Oh man, I really don't like binding any, like, stays, corsets, any of it. Ugh. But anyway, we're almost done. So here we are. Now, I have a bit of bias tape here. I was just using a piece that's longer than this. This just happens to be very close to the right length I need. It might be just a little too short. We're going to find out. But yeah, I would recommend using more than this if you can. But let's see. I'm going to show you how to get started. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our bias, and I would recommend using a little bit, a good amount to anchor it down. I'm just going to use a smidge just because I'm almost out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this around the back so that when I stitch it down, it's already going to be anchored down. Now I have my bias tape here. It's the same as the last one. It's cut down. It's about 1/4 inch. And we're just going to go just like we did for the bottom, nice and slow, pivot a lot. Here we go. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do before I press my binding is I'm actually going to trim my threads. The other thing I'm going to do is, you see the weird bits here. I'm just going to trim this away so that my binding will lay over that smoothly. Trim the long tailing threads down this side. And now, that curve going. There we go, it's better. And I'm going to do the same down here. It also got a little weird. Alright, now I'm going to press it up and then over. I'm going to be careful and try not to get too close to my bones here because I don't want to melt them by accident. The joys of using plastic. You don't have this kind of trouble with metal, but nope, we're using plastic. I think I'm just really ready to be moving on to the next part of the project. Okay, so now we're going to flip them over. Again, just like last time, this could probably be a little bit neater, but like I said, I'm kind of over this. So I'm definitely doing this the easier way. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You have to do what you have to do in order to get the project done, right? Okay, so we're looking surprisingly nice from the front. I took this end over. Okay, so I'm going to take this back to my sewing machine and finally finish this part. Okay, so just like last time, we are going to just stitch in the ditch, and we're going to catch the bottom. We'll be catching the bottom of the binding as we go along. Okay, so our stays are all bound, so let's move on to the straps. Okay, I'm going to sew on my strap holders before I sew on the actual straps. This is because the straps are really just one long piece of twill tape. I feel like they're going to get in the way, so I figured this would probably be easier to take care of first. So to start, I just have, I have about 7 inches of twill tape here, and I'm going to sew this into a loop. I think the instructions call for bias tape, but I think twill tape works just as well, or even better. I don't know. I've never tried it with bias tape, but you know, I have twill tape, so that's what I'm using. I couldn't really tell from the instructions. It looked like they wanted you to kind of like sew it, like, you know, down both ends. I might be wrong. I didn't really look at the instructions because I figured I already know this part. What I do is I sew my twill tape into a tube, and I just stitch down one end. That way, these can move and adjust as needed when I adjust my straps. So super easy part. We're just going to sew the 2 ends together here, probably about 1/4 of an inch. All right, I'm going to repeat that on the second one. Go back and forth a couple of times, make sure it's really secure. Alright, I'm going to trim the excess threads. There we go. Now I just turn them inside out. There we go. And there we go. Okay, so I just wanted to show how I'm going to line up my strap holders here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the top part of the side, the part that's not stitched, that's going to be lined up right here with the edge of the bias tape. It's going to be right next to that first grommet, or eyelet if you did it the proper way. And then the back end is going to fall somewhere back here in between the side seams and the side back seam. So there we go. And I'm just going to stitch this on by hand, which I might not be able to do very well right here because the camera is actually in between my 2 arms, which was really bad planning. Let's see. So I'm going to kind of go through the back, in between the bones, come up. Back down. Yeah, this is really hard when you can't really see what you're doing. Okay, new plan. I'm going to stitch this on and I'm going to come back. But just so you know, you really don't need any kind of special stitching or anything for this. It's just whatever's going to help it stay on. So I'll be right back. Okay, I also just want to mention real fast sewing on our straps. I have probably about 1 yard of twill tape here. What you're going to do is you're just going to sew it right to the back of your front here. So what you see is you have the front, and you have this little tab that kind of comes out. You're going to stitch this right to the back of your tab. If your bones come down far enough, you can potentially do this by machine. You can also do it by hand. The important thing to remember is you want this to be nice and secure, because this is going to take some stress, especially if you keep pulling at them and make them tight, and or if you pull them to loosen them. So you just really want to make sure that these are nice and secure. Okay, and then the last thing you want to do is you want to sew on your hooks. So right here. So I just have them pretty much where my first tab is. I usually just, the last time I did this, I just kind of stitched it on right here at an angle going with the seam. And I'm pretty sure that's still going to be fine. It looks like that's about where it ended up on my other ones. You can always move it over a little bit. That's up to you. I'm probably going to just stitch it right here and just hope for the best. Alright, so you got a bit of hand sewing to do now, possibly. So, you know, sit down, turn on the TV, listen to some music, and we're in the home stretch. Okay, now that all the hand sewing is done, we're ready to lace up our stays. Now I'm just going to demonstrate how to do this real fast. You're going to do this on the front and the back. I'd recommend doing the back first and then lacing up the front, and then tightening the back or loosening the back as you need it. It's up to you, but I'm just going to show you on the front real fast how we're going to lace these up. So I have a bit of ribbon here. My ribbon is probably a little bit more than 3 yards long. I just wanted to make sure I definitely had enough to cover everything. I'm probably going to cut it when it's all over. So I just wanted to show you real fast how we're going to do spiral lacing. Alright, so we're going to take our ribbon and we're going to pop it through the first eyelet on the same side that has the that only has the 1/2 inch between the first and second grommet. And we're going to just tie this in a knot in the back. Just tie it off right there. And do as many times, you know, you're going to want to tie it nice and tight to make sure that it holds, but you don't want to affect the front of your stays. So make sure it's loose enough to go around the stays without crushing them at all. But you want to make sure that the knot is tight enough to withstand a lot of strain, which is what it's going to have to deal with soon. Just going to tie that on. I'm sure there's a better way to tie it, but that's what we're dealing with right now. There has to be definitely a better way to tie that. I think I did one too many. Alright, so we got that nice and tied on. So I'm going to go up through the back, and then I'm going to go across the front. I'll just show you. It makes it easier. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go up through the back. We're going to pull our ribbon all the way through. Alright, and we're going to just adjust it here to make sure it's not all twisted. And then we're going to go across the front and in the front. Pull the ribbon through again. I'm going to trim this rabbit ear in a second, don't worry. Okay. And then we're going to repeat that all the way down. So we're going to go up through the back. And down through the front. I'm not saying this is the definitive way to lace up your stays, but this is the way I'm doing it. So, see if I can get through 2 in 1 here. There we go. There we go. Let me just snip this real fast. Alright, now you're going to do this all the way down to the bottom, and then you're going to tie it off, you're going to end up tying it off right here. Alright, so I'm going to lace mine up, I'm going to pop them in my dress form, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, the stays are finally finished. I think these took me somewhere between 2 to 3 weeks to finish, and most of that was really just because I was procrastinating binding the bottom part of my stays. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with them. They're all laced up onto my dress form, and let me just show you how the straps on the back work real fast. So you can see they start here at the top, and then what they do is they crisscross. They're not quite fitting on my, they do match up properly, but they're not quite fitting on my dress form right now. But anyway, they crisscross along the back. They go through the strap holders. And then they go around the front. And they just hook on right here. And that keeps them in place. Which is really convenient, because if you ever need to adjust them throughout the day, you can. And I was definitely adjusting my last pair by the time I got to the end of my day. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how they ended up turning out, even with all the shortcuts I took. Hopefully yours turned out well, good as well. And I'll see you next time when we do our side hoops. Bye!